conversation. But it's time for our NBA Team of the Week, a recurring conversation. And we're going to start with number one here. So I know, Connor, you wish we were talking the Denver Nuggets. We're not. We're talking the Utah Jazz, who are up 19 to 15 right now, as I made
Well,
some
actually,
offensive adjustments.
Rutledge, per our text message conversation, the team that I wish we were talking about actually beat these Jazz last night.
And that's true. That's the Dallas Mavericks, which they did lose on Monday. This week, funny you bring up schedule. The Jazz have they're going to prove a lot this week's schedule with everything they got playing. Hold on, I need this to go in. All right, run in transition. So this week's schedule for the Jazz, they lost to the Mavs. They have the Suns tomorrow night. They play Portland this week, and then they play Sacramento on Thursday. They're currently 38 and 12. They're number one record in the league and number one in the West. They are nice block. Um, they are 22 and 2 at home, and then their road record is they are 16 and 10 on the road. So Connor, who's kind of leading the way for the Jazz?
I think first and foremost, we got to talk about Rudy Gobert. Definitely having a really good season. I know before we've had the conversation of, would you rather have Jokic, Gobert, or Embiid on your roster? Gobert, whether or not you take the other two guys, Gobert is no slouch. I think Donovan Mitchell scoring 25 points a game is a big-time asset to the Jazz. One player that I think shouldn't be overlooked, especially with the amount of good guard play out west, is Mike Conley. The ageless wonder, Mike Conley, is a guy who hasn't won a title, a guy who can just be that gritty, maybe point guard to come in, play some defense, get the ball where it needs to go, and kind of work from there. And I really think that Mike Conley will continue to have a big role in with the Jazz throughout the rest of their season and into their playoff run.
Yeah, their roster's doing them some favors. Rudy Gobert is top two, if not leads the league, in three different stats categories. That's rebounds, blocks, and his field goal percentage shooting. I liken him to where he's almost like a Shaquille O'Neal that can shoot. So if you put him on the free throw line, you don't get really worried. Someone else to talk about is they also can shoot out from the perimeters. Joe Ingles is 50% from the three-point line, which is second in the NBA. So and I'm just quoting you all night tonight, Connor, with all of your great sayings. They win in a variety of ways. They lead the league in offense. They lead the league in defense. Um, they have a month to go until the playoffs. Playoffs start May 18th. Remember, there is the NBA play-in tournament to where the top six are locked in, and then 7, 8, 9, and 10 have to play for the remaining playoff spots. In like this weird, I think it was if you're number 8, you get two chances to play whole rule. But it's going to be cool to watch. Um, the team
So,
of concern. Go ahead.
mm-hmm. No,
I think
go. Who's the team of concern?
in
Maybe
the
these Nuggets after that nice, easy lay-in.
that was a oh man, it was so wide open. Um, the team of concern for me in the West is not the Lakers this year. The Lakers lost a lot of their bench depth with no Rondo and no Dwight Howard, which is showing. AD and LeBron are hurt. I believe the West. The Nugs are pretty good. Of course, the Jazz are leading it, but I think it's all about how well does Phoenix do. So how do the Jazz contend against Phoenix? Super excited for this matchup on Wednesday. Um, but it's going to be, they win a lot, but how do they do in a series? So I have some dates that you need to circle on your calendar, Connor. And that is
Go
going
on.
forward April 17th and April 19th. In the remaining parts of their schedule, the Jazz will play the Lakers twice at home and back to back. Yeah, Gobert fouled you. But they play the Lakers back to back, and I want to see how they do with going back to back games against the same teams. There's one thing to be said where you play a series, and even your division, your conference person or your division person, you see them again and again, and you get a feeling for what they're going to do. But what is it like to go night in and night out? Do they go 2-0? Do they go 1-1? Do they go 0-2? So I think that's going to be big for them. So you were gonna say something, Connor. What was it you wanted to talk about?
Rutledge, one of the
Or we were talking
interesting things,
playoffs.
especially as you brought up the Jazz and their ability in questioning how they would do throughout the course of a series. They just had a very interesting run where they not only did they have to play the Memphis Grizzlies. I know the Memphis Grizzlies, aren't the Phoenix Suns by any stretch, but they had to play the same NBA team 3 times in 6 days. And not only that, but their third game in 6 days where they had to play the Memphis Grizzlies, their plane nearly crashed. I don't know if you remember that story that came up, Rutledge.
Tell our viewers about it, Connor.
It was kind of bottom line was uh, they were flying to Memphis for their game, and they literally had an engine explode. Uh, and there you go. Donovan Mitchell, who is a nervous flyer as it was, literally would not go to the game because he was too nervous to fly. And the Jazz ended up beating Memphis for the third time in 6 days, a game that they could have definitely kind of mailed it in, a game that they could have said, you know what, we are a little emotionally exhausted, a little emotionally drained, but they came out and they won anyway. So, I think that the Jazz are definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with. So let me ask you this, Rutledge, because you seem to be all in on the Jazz. What do you think stops the Jazz throughout a playoff series?
Um, I think it's going to be how do you limit Gobert's role? How do you take Rudy Gobert out of it? He's so versatile. He's good in the glass, he's good in the paint, he's good defensively. How do you limit his sort of role? How do you play around him? Even now tonight, he's playing right where the big man should be, playing just outside of the key, hanging down there in the paint. How do you take him out of the equation? And how do you make them shoot out on the perimeter? It's going to be tough on them because, you know, Donovan Mitchell can score points. But I think for anyone, they're going to have to do, and they're going to have to make the Jazz one-dimensional, or they're going to have to make them work around your defense. Has anyone done that yet? Some, but with only 12 losses for the year, it's not a consistent thing that someone can do. That's why I want to see what can the Lakers do. Now, I don't know if LeBron and AD will play that night. I don't think they'll be back yet. But how will the Lakers handle that on the 17th and 19th? And like you said, Memphis couldn't. So it's going to have to be, I think with the overall outlook for them, it's not going to be about the West. I think they're going to win the West and be the Western Conference champions. But
Wow, heard it here first, folks.
heard it here first. Utah Jazz Western Conference champions. They will play the Phoenix Suns in the Western Conference. So I have the Lakers getting knocked out of the playoffs. But it's going to be how does Brooklyn handle them? Or, um, how does I would really put it up to Brooklyn, or how does even maybe Milwaukee take them? But it's going to be big. What could beat them in your eyes, Connor? What do you have that takes the Jazz down? The Nuggets, I'm assuming?
You know, I don't think that the Suns are. I think that Mike Conley can sort of neutralize Chris Paul a little bit, right? You just kind of tell Mike Conley, "Hey, you just make Chris Paul's night terrible. That's your role." I think Mike Conley will embrace that, and I think that even though the Suns have not just DeAndre Ayton, but also Nerlens Noel as kind of a secondary player to throw at Rudy Gobert, I kind of see the Jazz, unless Devin Booker just does some things that we've never seen before. I kind of think that the Jazz can beat can beat the Suns there. I think that in the East, the big thing will just be that wing defense, right? Whether or not you're having to face James Harden and Kevin Durant, whether or not you're having to match up against Giannis, right? That wing defense is so critical that it'll be very interesting to see how the Jazz operate from there.
I think the sky for them is the limit. The only person they need to worry about is themselves if they're going to beat themselves. So big on the Jazz. I have a very high confidence in them. Connor, how far do you see them going in the playoffs?
I could. How far do I see them right now? I see the Utah Jazz making the conference finals, whether or not it's a Phoenix Suns team. I just said that the Phoenix Suns would lose to the Jazz. I could see the Clippers beating the Jazz, actually.
Okay, so you see the Clippers
So
beating the Jazz before the
I'm
conference
I'm still
finals.
on that Clipper train.